And about a week and a half later, the belts for the Pioneer KH-8811 Music Center have arrived. And let's check them out. This one corresponds with this one. This one corresponds with this one here. These are the old belts. And the last one is this one. So the sizes, if you're interested, are like that. And the large long belt looking inside the Pioneer KH-8811 cassette deck section. And here's the belts, counter belt. All these belts are rather hard. Okay, so it looks like this bracket here will have to come off, and the flywheel bracket will have to come off. The circuit board will have to come off, and we'll see what's under there. And with these screws here on this bracket here, this one came out okay. This one, although they're both the same screws, and none of these screwdrivers really fit it properly, and this one's a really stubborn one. And since the screwdrivers, I've tried 8, none of them really fit properly. I don't want to strip the screw before I can pull it out. Alright, I found a rusty old screwdriver that fitted that screw pretty well, and I got this one out. And just for the sake of knowing where all the screws went, I like to put them back in their place so I don't lose them. On the back side of this circuit board, there's all these switches for the mechanism itself. And if we swing that out of the way, there's access to the flywheel, or 2 flywheels that it's got on here. There's one flywheel here, another massive flywheel there. So next step is to remove the bracket itself on these 3 screws. In the case of this mechanism, it's more than a bracket. There's a lot more attached to it, like the whole spindle and the idler wheel, and you have to swing a few components out of the way to get that out, and it's going to come out with a spindle and the flywheel and the idler tire, idler wheel and everything. It's all attached to that bracket. It looks like for the bracket and the whole assembly to come out, I have to remove this spring here and then slide out this assembly with a pulley, and they'll come out. With this mechanism unhooked from that spring here, I was able to just squeeze it past everything, and as you can see, it comes out with a spindle and idler tire and everything, but there's still a spring attached to it down the bottom here. That has to be removed for it to fully come out, and that might be a handful to get it back on. And it does look like it's actually glued in there. The end of the spring is glued in there, so there must be a reason for that. I might just leave it in there for now. Glued in or soldered in even, maybe, I don't know. Okay. At this stage, I can get to the main belt, and this one here. Still cannot get to the counter belt. I can take it out, but not put it back on. And there's two idler ties. There's one on this brass pulley here, and there's one on that spindle here. So I was able to remove all the belts. The main one that went around here to this pulley here, I think, or maybe to that one. It's the big one to this one, around here and around here. The smaller belt went from here to the bottom pulley on this flywheel here, and counter belt went from here to the spindle. So this is about as much as I can do for now without new belts. I have to order new belts in. In the meantime, while I'm waiting for the new belts, I can lube up the record switch with a contact cleaner, and maybe some of these switches here, give them a bit of a contact cleaner clean, and figure out with a speed setting screws for them on the motor. Dress the idler ties with a diamond file, and figure out how to get to the front when it comes to when it's time to put the counter belt back on. I'll have to lube up all the plastic gears a little bit. I've deglazed both idler tires and cleaned up all pulleys, the flywheel surface and the pulleys, and despite looking relatively clean, there was a bit of filth on them. Now, what is that noise when you open the cassette door? What is that sound that it makes? Let's have a look. As far as that sound that it makes when you open the cassette door, can you see it? That's what it is. When you open the cassette door, instead of getting slowed down, instead of slowing down the cassette door by using a pneumatic ram or a shock absorber, this thing uses a flywheel, and that flywheel absorbs some of that speed of the door, and once the door is open, it runs free wheels. So that is the sound. So this is how it looks from the front, and I have to say I'm impressed with the way the quality of this unit. For instance, with the cassette door screws, they don't screw into the plastic door itself. They got a brass insert that the screws screw into, so that's really cool. One more thing I want to do before I put this unit aside for a week and a half waiting for the belts is lubricate the flywheel bearings. And for that, so I don't lose that washer, I'm going to put a bit of sticky tape over it down there, so the washer doesn't fly into the unit but gets stuck to the tape instead, and I don't lose it. It's going to need a bit more sticking to, but you get the point of what I'm trying to do. So when I pull the flywheel out from the other side, I've got the washer here. It's not lost. Now I can lubricate the flywheel from both sides. So to put it back together, I'm going to have to start off with this bracket and put the counter belt on that rim there, on the spindle rim, and throw it back in between these gears, or these pulleys here, into the auto stop mechanism there that this item interlocks with, inside there, and that belt has to be on and pulled through to this pulley here. At this stage I'm thinking it'd be the easiest to install the pulley, the belt on this pulley, and pull it through here and have it ready for this when it's going back in, and throw it on that pulley and put it in all together as one. I'll give that a go. And the easiest way to do this would be to feed the belt through here, through this gap here, and hook it up on that other pulley, even if it goes through on the inside of the pulley, to give it some more length. And then feeding it behind the backing plate and onto that spindle there. So that's what I'm trying to do now, with a hook from the inside, get it hooked on the belt and pull it through onto the counter pulley. Like that. So I fed the belt through here and onto the other side, pulled it through with a hook onto the counter pulley, which I'm going to move off the pulley and onto the inside of it to secure it, and it's not going anywhere. And then get it on the other side of this backing plate here and ready for the spindle. So when I say on the inside of that pulley, I mean over it, and like that, and it's secured there. It's not going anywhere, and it gives us a bit more length to put it on the spindle there. So this belt here is going to be the hardest one to fit, and it's twisted on me already, but I've got it pulled through to the other side from this pulley here, and I've got it on the inside to give me a bit more length for fitment. But I do have it here on the other side, even though it's twisted, it's here. All I have to do is untwist it and hook it on the spindle and fit all that into the auto stop mechanism, and this is the hardest belt to fit. So I'll fit it over the pulley here, and at this stage it doesn't want to stay there. Yep. Yeah, it's a bit of a handful, that one. At this stage I'm almost there, so I'll remove the screws that I've put back in place from the bracket so I don't lose them, and I know the correct positioning, and it's almost there. And so I've stretched it out a bit and got it onto that spindle there, and keep in mind it's not all that stretched because it's on the inside of that pulley at this stage. And it looks like to get it in, you get in this part, the back of that pulley in first, then you align the auto stop mechanism fork to go into that rest of the auto stop mechanism, and go from there. Yeah, and that belt has come off, so I'm just going to leave it there, and I'm going to get the spindle a bit closer to the backing plate, and when I do, and I'll have the auto stop mechanism fork aligned with the rest of the mechanism there, I'll try to put it back onto that pulley there, and it's still on here on the counter, and it's nearly aligned there in place. Like I said, this is the most fiddliest and hardest belt out of the three to fit in here, and you definitely need some patience with this one. At this stage, I looped the belt around this pulley here, and then at the back, manipulated that fork to go onto this peg here for the auto stop mechanism. And for this reason, I didn't want to lubricate anything in the auto stop mechanism or anything in there, so I don't get the belt contaminated. Don't want to do it twice, cleaning off the belt and everything. I can put a dab of grease in there when this is all bolted back into place. It's a lot better than getting things contaminated and greasy all over. And with everything interlocked, I'll now secure the bracket in its position with the screws. Not so fast. The capstan pulley goes in first. The capstan flywheel. Okay, so I'm back to square one with that counter belt, and it's time to lubricate the capstan and its bearings and fit that first. Doesn't matter, we'll cut it out later. To lubricate the capstan shaft and its bearings, I'm going to use semi-synthetic automotive grease oil, in the viscosity like 5W30 or 10W30, and I think it's a better lubricant than this. So you don't need a lot. Put one drop here, one drop there, and there'll be plenty. On the lubricated shaft, I'll fit this washer now. Clean up the excess oil inside the flywheel. Lubricate the inside of the flywheel bearing. And I'd say this is greasy enough or oily enough. And fit the flywheel in, and I'll degrease the flywheel again before fitting the new belt on it again. And also lubricate the front of the capstan shaft bearing. Also lubricate the front of the capstan shaft bearing. And now, with the flywheel slightly pulled out, I'm going to fit this in the spindle and the meshing with the peg, that this fork meshing in with the peg, and throw the belt on both ends on it again, and lubricate the tip of the top of the flywheel bearing. So with this back in place, I'm going to have to mesh the fork with the rest of the auto stop mechanism and put the front of the counter belt on, and the back, actually the back of the counter belt on first, and then the front. I'm not going to bore you with that. You can refer to the earlier part of the video. I was joking, I'm not going to cut it out. I'll give you a quick recap though. On the inside of the counter pulley, and here over the spindle, forks inside the peg on the auto stop, and it's back in, screws in for the bracket, and lubricating the tip of the flywheel before doing the screws up. Now it's time to fit the larger belt that goes around this pulley here, over the top of this one, and back around the other one. And then next, the one that fits further out is between this pulley here and the bottom of the flywheel pulley there. Okay, this is where it's all starting to happen. I fit that belt onto the motor shaft. And around the second flywheel. There. And at the bottom there. While turning that, it will work itself in, whilst making sure get something like that. Yeah. Like that. Okay, and this is the proper tape and belt part for the long belt. Starts off at the motor, goes over the top of the first flywheel, then goes down and around the top of the, from the bottom to the top of a second flywheel, to this idler pulley, and down to the motor again here. So like this, around the second flywheel here, and then to the top, and like around here and to the motor. One more belt left, and that's one from here, from this pulley here to the flywheel pulley here. and that's this one here, and that should be really easy to fit compared to the rest of the stuff. And this one took like 3 seconds to fit. It just goes behind the bracket and onto that top plastic pulley there. It's the simplest build to fit on this deck here. The rest, yeah, try it. So at this point, before I screw off a bracket to the chassis, I'll put a dab of grease here on the tip of that flywheel bearing. So the red bit there on the tip of that shaft is the bit of grease, straight from a toothpick for the bearing. At this point in time, the counter belt, this is a counter end of the belt. I can pull it through onto the pulley itself. Remember, I needed that extra length to fit everything else. And yeah, maybe try with this thing. Like that, and that's on. And now it's time to screw off the bracket itself. So to put it back together with this bracket and the spindle and everything, you have to pull out the flywheel a little bit to fit that through the gap. And what I think has to happen is the belt itself here has to be on top of this shaft here, and also on top of that spring there below, that spring that's glued there. And that auto stop fork from that assembly has to fit on that peg of this device here. I was going to say you can see it a little bit better here, but it's just not focusing. Here we go. That fork there, and that peg here, and that's the other side of the fork. If you're in focus properly. Yeah. And as far as the main belt pass goes from the motor pulley over the top to the idler pulley here, down here, make sure it's over this peg, down here to this flywheel here, around that flywheel to the bottom. Make sure it's not getting hooked on this lever here. It's going to go over it and over the spring, not under the spring, that spring that is glued there. Then it goes over the top of the second pulley and back to the motor. So like that. It's a bit fiddly. And now I can put on the counter belt. Now that I've got the main belt on. And the counter belt, once again, you put it on from this side onto that pulley there, and back to the counter on the other side, which is this pulley here, and I've got it on the inside of the pulley to give it a bit more length for the fitment. And now I've got the correct belt path. And that's easy enough to hook it on with a hook like that or something similar on the counter pulley. And one more belt left. Oh, actually that one lying down there from that there's this pulley here to that main flywheel. So I think I'll leave the video as it is without editing the blunders that I've done. You might encounter the same sort of problems with you're just not getting it around properly around everything, and when you turn the main belt turns by the motor, it kept on slipping off. If you're getting the same thing happening, well, yeah, this is what it is. So once again, that idler pulley to the bottom of that flywheel there, and now I can screw on the bracket now, and everything is working smoothly. The belt's not slipping off or anything. Yeah, I'll leave all that in the video, so if you're encountering the same problems, you can refer it back to this. So just a quick confirmation that everything works. I've put an old rubber glove underneath in between the circuit board so nothing shorts out. The deck is in play, and I've flicked the on-off switch. Hang on, is it in play? Wait. Yeah, it's in play, but you have to make contact here. And that everything's rolling. Oh, don't touch the motor shaft. That's good. Next step is return that spring to this lever here. Lubricate the mechanism, set the speed on it, and demagnetize it. With the spring back on this lever here. On this lever here, that spring. Now it's time to lubricate the mechanism. And as always, I use PTFE grease, which is semi-synthetic and plastic friendly. So I'll use that again for this one. Alright, so I've installed new belts on this deck and went to test it to see how it works. And what happened, that's just talcum powder from the rubber gloves. What happened is this thing popped out of it. I've had it on its side and upside down and everything, and this thing popped out of it. And now the play button doesn't spring back after pressing it down, but it springs back with pressing of the pause button. So I'm going to have to remove the fascia. It's still held on by these two screws here, and take out the mechanism and have a look where this came from. Hopefully it's somewhere obvious. So I got the fascia off from this thing, and got a date code on it, 5th of December 1978. And the speed adjustment for the motors on this side as well, although there is something similar looking on the other side. I'm not too certain that's for adjusting speed. And now I can remove the cassette mechanism by undoing all these screws around here and pop it out and have a look where this pin actually belongs to. Mm.